Hey everyone, you're tuned into the debut episode of Greatest Hits. We are live.
We just went live?
Yeah, we're live right now.
Let's start over.
Hey everyone, you tuned into the debut episode of Greatest Hits on the Hundreds TV. My name is Justin. I'll be taking you into the Hundreds archive every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Each week, we'll be putting timeless classics out of the vault, and we'll be able to tell you the story behind each piece, as well as the designers and creatives that brought these collabs and these pieces to life. While you watch, you'll be able to chat with other viewers and ask us questions about your favorite classics from the Hundreds past. You can also hit the shopping cart tab to purchase these one-of-one pieces to add to your personal collection. And when I say one-of-one, I mean these pieces have been selected to us, dug through our archives, and we're now presenting them to you, the customer, the viewer, so you can enjoy them and enjoy the timeless nature of the Hundreds. Today, we have the legendary guests, Ben and Bobby Hundreds. What's going on, guys? Good as it. So,
Justin, you're doing great. Wait, hold on. Just have a huge question. How can someone buy these shirts? Someone can buy the shirts right now. How do you buy the shirts?
I can buy them right now. So check it.
I'm genuinely curious.
I am curious. On the Hundreds TV, we have a shop tab. And you can click the shop tab and then navigate through not only these Hundreds greatest hits pieces, but all of the clothing that we sell, all of the products that we sell. So this is like an interactive TV shopping communication.
And in these shirts right here, in our web store, they're under the greatest hits. There's like a tab for the greatest hits. Oh, cool.
Cool. So now we have our own web store to highlight these specific greatest hits pieces from the Hundreds vault.
I like how Ben and I are the two last people to know what's going on. How any of this is working. I was just led in here, told to sit down and reply to your questions.
Okay, so like with that, we're gonna start right off with that. All right, so the Hundreds since 1980. That was the year you guys were born. That wasn't the year the brand was founded. So can you tell me a little bit more about how that was conceptualized?
Well, the brand is a reflection of the story of our lives. So Ben and I were both born in 1980, and when we say since 1980, what we're trying to really say is that everything is backed with a purpose and a reason that's been pulled from our experiences and our lifestyle and our background, and so you're really reading our story when you're supporting the brand.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just to echo what Bobby's saying is that although the brand started in 2003, that really the brand it's the story of our lives since 1980. And even though we didn't actually start selling T-shirts until 2003, we say the brand really did start though from when we were born till now, it's still evolving.
All right, so for the people at home that haven't seen it, how extensive is the Hundreds archive?
Oh, I mean, I think it's gotten bigger over the last year or so. We didn't really put that much attention towards it up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And it was, in the early days, between me, Bobby, and my brother, I think all of us, we had one of every single T-shirt we would take. And then I remember like at a certain point, it was probably right around year 5 or so, it was like, all right, this is a little bit too much. I don't need one of everything. And it started to slow down. And then, now it's just, I go through and I handpick what I want for myself or what I want for my personal archive, whether it be from inline or from a collab or something. And I think a few years ago, at one point, Bobby and I were chatting, or maybe we were all just probably chatting and talking about archive room. And I think Bobby had come back. I don't know if it was Quicksilver or Volcom.
Quicksilver has an archival room.
Yeah, and Bob came back from there and just like was just blown away by their archive room and how it was set up. And we should do that. And we talked about it probably for like a year about putting it together. And then it was like, all right, let's just start bringing stuff in. So Bobby brought in a bunch of shirts. I brought in a bunch of shirts, my brother, and we started putting it together. And then we started putting a call out to a lot of old employees or friends, family that had just old stuff that, maybe we were looking for, we just don't have it, didn't have it. So people have been submitting, and the archive room it's been built out really. I think it's great. We have a great collection of T-shirts. We have a good amount of hats. Like I think most of our shoes are in it. We have a lot. Yeah, it's good.
So with that said, is there anything you guys ever made or a project or a collab, something that you really, really regret not grabbing for yourselves, that now it's just like gone forever?
Ooh, so many. I wish I had kept more of our marathon collab that we did with Nipsey. There's so many, honestly. I mean, just the other day, just with Stone Cold Steve Austin coming out this last weekend as like a totally pro BLM guy. I was like, man, I wish I'd stopped out some of those shirts that we did with him. But I don't know. I'm not even remembering all.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not remembering all of it. Like I know there's. I honestly, I kind of wish I had a couple more, or a couple even. I don't even know if I have them or not. Some of our Grateful Dead collab. A couple of those shirts were really good.
Yeah.
And we were so early with that.
We were the first to work with Grateful Dead
in our world. Yeah.
Like, I think in a way where they had never really licensed before, they had never allowed anyone to affect their Steal Your Face logo. Yeah. And so they let us do that. That was the first. But we did that in like 2014.
Yeah, something like that.
Streetwear didn't turn it into a trend until much later.
Okay, so this is Greatest Hits. This is us looking back into the archive and looking at things that have already been produced. So this is the second cycle or the second life of these clothing, right?
Yeah.
So today, the fashion industry is really based around production and consumption, right? So I just wanted to see if you guys wanted to speak about the sustainable nature of this project and if that had anything to influence with like the second hand and resale culture we're trying to build here.
Yeah, I think it's pretty widely understood and accepted at this point that we have enough clothing on this planet to last us for generations. So realistically, we don't need more clothing from just a utilitarian point of view. We do need it from an artistic point of view. We need it from a capitalist point of view, from an economy-based point of view. But in terms of what we need to actually just protect ourselves from the elements, like there's enough clothes out there. And so that has butted up against this larger ongoing discussions, growing discussion, especially within fashion, about sustainability and how we need to be conscious of the materials that we use, the product that we make, that we try to be as least wasteful and efficient with what we make as possible in order to contribute less to environmental destruction. So there's been more noise around secondhand, vintage, whatever you want to call it, because people are saying if we already have the clothing available, then why don't we just make fashion out of that? And we looked through our archives and our history and realized that just like we've been doing with design, where we realized that we can reference our own history, that we were influential and instrumental in our own way within the culture 17 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that we can also bring back a lot of those designs and reference them and tell good stories around them like we're doing today, but also they still hold up well. I mean, that's something that we've always prided ourselves on, is making clothing that not just lasts 10 years, 20 years, but in terms of like holds up the materials themselves and the construction, but also lasts from a trend point of view, that it still looks relevant and timely and timeless years later.
Okay, cool. So I guess kind of going back to storytelling. So this past year, Hundreds has like really gotten a stride. Everything from Family Style, had a number of very successful collabs. Just brought up the WWE thing, which was huge. Mm-hmm. So from this past year, what do you think is going to hold the test of time from years from now? So 10 years from now, what's going to be the greatest hit from 2019, 2020?
Bobby already mentioned that Steve Austin shirt definitely is one that I think will go down. Honestly,
I really want one more the more we talk about it.
What are some of the other projects that we put out this year?
I guess very recently what we just dropped today.
Oh yeah,
right.
The one we dropped today is.
What did we drop today?
Yeah, we dropped a collab with BBC for Black Lives Matter, and all the proceeds from it are going to be donated to charity. But it's the first time that we've worked with them, and I think that our stories have lined up over the years many times. You know, they started the same year we did, and I think that our fan base has been waiting for us to work with BBC for forever, and very special that we got to do this with BBC and put this shirt out. Absolutely. I mean, I was telling Bobby earlier that I was talking to someone this morning, and they said they bought two, one to wear now. They bought two, one to wear now, one to keep on ice. But he said that this shirt in 15 years from now, beat up, worn in, has holes. He said this is going to be my favorite shirt 15 years from now already.
So awesome. And before we get into the highlighted products that we're going to be going over to, which you can buy and shop with our 100 shopping tab right next to the 100's TV, interactive shopping. So when you guys look at some of the old stuff you guys have made in the past, how has like your design style changed? Or do you see things and you're like, well, I maybe would have done this differently now?
Yeah.
Or maybe because like sometimes you look at stuff in the past and you're like, damn, I was really on fire. You know what I mean?
No, I've never I don't even think that about product that released yesterday. So I think part of being an artist or a designer is that you're never satisfied with your work, right? You're a musician, you understand.
Yes,
this,
for
right?
sure.
Like there's always room for improvement. You're like, it's not quite perfect. And so it's that pursuit of perfection that keeps us going, right? It's like never quite right. So hopefully I never actually like perfect it, because then I'd be done with my job. Well, especially when I look back on our earlier stuff, I had no idea what I was doing. I grew up drawing, but I never took like a formal art and design class. I had to teach myself the programs. I designed like the first 3-4 collections is purely off of Adobe Photoshop, not Illustrator. Didn't even know how to vectorize at that time. I was just making these huge art files on Photoshop. And so I was limited, like the ideas and the concepts were there, but I was limited in terms of how I could execute the designs. And so even though there's good stories, like the execution of them aren't completely right. Thankfully, along the way, we were able to work with and hire designers that were much more talented than I am, that were much more qualified and better skilled. And so they were better equipped to implement a lot of those concepts. And so as the years went on, you see like the designs become fully fleshed out, ideas, fully fleshed forms where we can see like it's very easy to tell what the concept is and the idea. But early on, it was like, you know, and there's a charm and a magic to everything looking like really raw and rudimentary, but I'm proud of some of the ideas. I'm definitely not proud of the execution on most of my designs for the last 17 years. Yeah.
I totally understand that too. You know?
Yeah.
But sometimes there is more magic with being less technically proficient at, say, these softwares, because it truly is like a rawness, and there's nothing like keeping you. Like you had a teacher that told you, you should do this way, and that's like boxing thinking.
Yeah. I mean, that was really me. That was like really me, not trying to copy anything, and it was just like trying to figure out the programs and stuff. You're watching like a young designer grow and figure it out in a way, which is sometimes like a much more compelling story than a polished professional designer who comes in and like does the right thing. You know, you want to see people mess up because that shows they're human. Wabi Sabi, look it up.
Wabi Sabi. All right, cool. So let's get into some of these greatest hits. I'm going to start with the Grateful Dead. So, you know, the Grateful Dead, Palo Alto, California, 1960s, psychedelic culture. Probably the most influential non-mainstream thing to ever be in like American culture. When I say non-mainstream, right?
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I mean, what was the first time you guys ever experienced like psychedelia or anything of that nature? Like, when was the first time you interacted with what this world is?
So when we were, this was, actually we did an official Grateful Dead collaboration. Yeah. This preceded that. This was for the opening of our San Francisco store, the 100 San Francisco. And is that, what year was that? 2009? 2008 or 2008? 2008. And so it was part of the opening day collection of shirts. We did this, a hieroglyphics collaboration, and then just some other shirts that were themed around Post and Taylor, which is where our intersection was. But the brand was always interested and infatuated with Grateful Dead because of how the fan base circulated recordings of the concerts. And there was this underground culture that very much was almost like a progenitor to what social media became decades later. But the Dead fan base had figured it out in terms of going, recording concerts, passing around tapes. And that became a thing within their culture. And so we just saw so many parallels between how streetwear underground culture was building at that time in the mid-2000s, late 2010s, social media and the internet and everything. We're so underground, and we're like, this is very much the same way that they did it, but they just did it like in the 60s.
And it's also funny what you said about the way the tapes are circulated, because Grateful Dead, one of the greatest bands of all time, but sometimes for like a young fan, it's intimidating to be like, oh no, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. 66, man, from Wisconsin, minute 54, like that's like, all right.
Exactly.
So but the thing I really like about the Grateful Dead is how cross-generational it is. You know what I mean? Like, right now, in this moment in time, we have Grateful Dead fans that are 12 years old and also like 78.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like really cool to see them just kind of take something that is so cross-generational.
So this is for sale right now?
So this is for sale right now.
This actual shirt?
This actual shirt. Like this is
which is from, if it's 2008, this is 12 years old.
Yeah.
Oh, right. And it says Rosewood Collection.
So what was the Rosewood Collection?
That was our in-store collection.
Okay.
You could only buy that at the shop. So whether it was at our at either LA store, San Francisco store, at the New York shop, or in our Santa Monica shop. So you could only buy that there. It wasn't available online or at any other retailer.
I just realized I made a mistake in the design. So 12 years later. It's
12 years later. I mean, hey, Bobby's imperfections now are classical art. You know what I mean? All right, cool. So next up, 1984, Karate Kid.
That's
right?
Yeah.
You guys were kids, right?
Well, at that time we were 4. I didn't see this in the theater then. I must have been seeing it. So growing up in Southern California, I don't know how it was wherever you're watching this and how you grew up. But in Southern California in the 80s and the 90s, they would have these like Channel 5 movies for a Sunday afternoon playing on just regular television, non-cable television. And Karate Kid was one of those movies that always just came on because it was family friendly and it was very relatable. And that is a top 5, maybe number 3 favorite movie of mine of all time. So this also was a foreshadowing to what would eventually be an official Karate Kid collaboration years later. But I don't know, I've always just loved the story of Karate Kid. It was also, in a way, an Asian American story because of Mr. Miyagi, Pat Morita. So to see Asian Americans on the screen in that way, to be the star, was like really compelling for someone like me growing up in the 80s. And then it was a coming of age story about an outcast kid who wasn't popular, who got the girl, who got chased and beat up by the bullies, who were actually really cool. And that was Cobra Kai. And so we wanted to do something on Cobra Kai, like, because they were just so indicative of like cool guy culture and streetwear at the time. Like that's just what they reminded me of. And I asked Monk One, who's a really great and prolific artist, if he would do his own interpretation. So this shirt Kai became one of our most popular shirts. In fact, like we re-released it, I think, years later. But this is from the original. I don't know what year this was. Do you know what year?
I would guess you have 09. I was going to say 2010, something like that. But yeah, love this shirt. I like it. Close to 10 years, or 10, 11 years old. That's 2X.
So this is available right now as well?
This is available right now on the shopping tab.
Our solid bomb on the back of the shirt, that's kind of like our swoosh. And it's always cool to be able to tell someone's wearing the hundreds from like a mile away, and they turn around and you're like, I think that's a 100 shirt.
So we just got a question that just came in. I think it kind of ties into this. So this is the listener. I'm passionate about storytelling, community, and the ideas of streetwear, but I'm not artistic in any way. How can someone like me get involved in a brand and play an important role? From Ian.
Well, the art piece of brands is only just one piece, right? So we have artists and designers here. Like I'm an artist and designer. We have David Fernandez. We have David Rivera. So there's designers here. But then there's also the guys who are running the operations, people like Ben, running the business. There's sales people, there's marketing people. So even though we are a business that's centered around art and creativity, the ones who actually make the machine work are not the artists. We're the ones who are just sitting in the corners drawing pictures and feeling all day. But the other ones in the equation are the ones who are keeping it alive. So there's many different roles for someone like you.
Yeah, I kind of have something to speak to is that I think, you know, like you were saying, there's artists and designers. But, you know, I think the people that connect the dots of the designer to the customer base, to the audience, I think that is like also an extremely important role because it's like kind of like the basement guitar player. You can be the best guitar player in the world, but if you never played outside of your basement, how do you really know? Right? So who's going to help you communicate your message and your medium to like a broader audience? So yeah, like Bobby was saying, marketing is like a really cool mode of transportation to like be involved in creative stuff and never ever having to design. Never having to ask some kid, yo man, I need my shit. Yo, where's my render? Yo, dude, we need to post this thing. You know what I mean? Like,
You're the one asking
what do I do professionally? Is like, where's my shit at? You know? so yeah, I hope that. All right, cool. So let's move on. So Ben said he doesn't like this tea. I wanted to use this tea because it kind of foreshadowed exactly what we're doing right now. And so one thing, Bobby, is we know, you know, the year 1993 is super important to you. Yeah. 13 is important.
I turned 13 in 1993, same as Ben.
Yeah, it's when the word teen is added to your age, right? So
I think Engines 36 Chambers dropped that year, Souls of Mischief had a record that year, Snoop had a big record that year, and then on the punk side, on the rock side, Nirvana had one of the bigger albums, Pearl Jam. Just like, and movies-wise. Just Google the movies from 1993.
And so I really love the shapes on this.
Yeah.
It's very Saved by the Bell.
What is the name of this shirt?
I had this down as a TV shirt.
Okay.
TV t-shirt.
It might
For sale.
Yeah.
Right now.
So you're watching this on the Hundreds TV, so I guess it did foreshadow. It was a parody of UHF, Weird Al Yankovic movie. Weird Al is the king of parody. We still love him. God bless Weird Al Yankovic. The original design back here was just this. It was a television screen, and then we added the spark. And the original logo said UHF, and we changed it to TH. You know, this is also very rare because we don't use TH. We're not allowed to because of Tommy Hilfiger. So anytime you see anything that says TH on the Hundreds piece, it's vintage, and it's from like 2008 and earlier. Oh, yeah. So we never use it. We use H if we're going to use any initial. But that's also very. Why don't you like the shirt?
It's just, I don't know. I think that like we're looking at greatness up on the wall.
Yeah.
And I think that shirt's good. I just think that Bitter Enemies or Paisley or Kai or the America shirts are all better.
You know who I think we want to see? That's Vito.
Oh yeah.
Vito, hopefully he's watching, but Vito was our headwear and accessories designer for a very long time. Vito wore that shirt a lot.
Okay, so you were talking a second ago about the whole TH thing, right? And then how that is a licensing conflict with Tommy Hilfiger, right? And so what I think is really interesting about the Bitter Enemies tea is this tea
is legend.
Yeah, so this tea came out at a time when you guys were under the radar enough that you could like just kind of get away with this sort of stuff, right? Yeah. And so I guess my question is, so what is behind the Bitter Enemies tea? I heard it was a beef.
Yeah,
and
there was.
So what was the beef? Who, what, when, where, why?
So the reference for the parody is Super Friends. Super Friends was a very popular cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon. So we grew up on Saturday morning cartoons, being 80s babies. And so it's called Super Friends, and it was about how all these characters were united to defeat evil. And when I was working on this design, we were going through an issue with a friend of ours who was very supportive, who honestly I don't even need to name because nobody knows who he is, and he's disappeared off the face of the planet. but he was very, you know, we were very supportive of him, and we thought we were friends. And then I realized like he was talking mad shit, and we ended up beefing. So it just was kind of like, I guess, just to signal how quickly a super friend could turn into a bitter enemy. And that was just like the nature of subversive parodies, especially in early streetwear, was like take the bigger corporate brand, the more, you know, the universally recognized icon or logo, and flip it to be against what it actually stands for, right? So Super Friends was all about friendship, Bitter Enemies was all about rivalry, and how close friends can turn on each other quickly. So I had like an old comic book with all the different characters, and then I, again, using only Photoshop because I didn't know how to use Illustrator, chopping everybody up and made it look like they were attacking each other. But yeah, if you actually look at it, like they were each kind of on their own, and it looks like they like turned their heads and stuff. But this was very popular.
Yeah,
it's a big.
You have a brand new one?
Yeah, yes. Check. This is Dead Stop with the original 05 tag.
Dead Stop. What size is that? 2X?
This is a 2X that is for sale.
Yeah,
right now, you can buy it.
Now you can buy this T-shirt.
I have to also point out another error, which drove me crazy.
Yeah.
So we didn't realize it at the time because I designed this graphic on a white background. And so I finished it, and again, on Photoshop, so not Illustrator. If you know Illustrator, you know that you would have caught this mistake. But there's a space right here that I just assumed was empty, and it was the back of the shirt showing through the background. But then when we printed it on gray or on darker color, it was here, the white actually, it was like, it wasn't like cut out. And so we went to production and we printed them all. It drove me nuts, and Ben was like, no one's gonna notice. But I'm like, I noticed.
And now look, 15 years later,
we're still
bothering me.
I take it.
It's the first thing I notice when I see the shirt. And then also the back is like pretty important.
Yeah. So this is when. So what mixed media? Give us just like a little background about what mixed media is.
I mean, at this time, mixed media was one of the sayings we used for everything that we did.
And our umbrella company.
Yeah. And you know, it was for all the content we created, for our website, for our blog, for all the product we made, whatever, anything. It was always part of mixed media for us. Yeah, like I think we had a T-shirt that said mixed media, like one of the first 5 shirts on our original American Apparel T-shirts
said mixed media right down here.
Yeah.
So it was also common practice at that time, and a good example of this for streetwear nerds was what the Cleaner Core brands were doing out of San Diego. Cleaner Core was a collective of brands that kind of came together, kind of like Wu-Tang style, like Odd Future style, like everyone has their own character and their own art, and then they come together to create this Voltron. So Cleaner Core was happening in San Diego. It was a brand called Fiber Ops, Iron, Self-Discovery Project. Some of them went on to become other brands like Hell's Bells, and Information was a part of Cleaner Core. In New York, Retail Mafia was another group like that. Retail Mafia had A-Life, J Money, Priceless, maybe, Iraq, Sir, Married to the Mob, and so that was New York's version of that crew of these brands, and we didn't have one. Like, one of the things that's always distinguished us, for better and for worse, is we've never come from a family tree. Like, we've created our own family tree over 17 years, but Ben and I were kind of an island on our own. We didn't come from the Stussy Can, we didn't come from Nike, we're not Adidas associated, like, we were just our own island. And so we had to create our own crew, and to do that, we just started creating ghost brands. And so on the back, you know, sometimes these groups would do this thing, they still do it. Like, a good example of that is that the most recent Black Lives Matter charity shirt that Fear God did, where it listed all of union, like, yo, like, we're all, like, this is our crew. You know, it's still very much like that tribal mentality, like, this is us, and, like, we stick together. Since we didn't have that, we just created ghost brands. And, you know, we had the Hundreds Mixed Media, which is our umbrella. Smoke and Mirrors, which this is by Knuckles, which was like a character named Wally Knuckles. And then just like some LA thing that I did. This is also how you know a shirt is really old, is if you see TH inside of the solid bomb. we didn't think that anyone wanted just the bomb from us, and so TH in there so that people knew it meant the hundreds. It's just the hundreds was bigger than the actual icon, and so eventually we got rid of the TH and turned it into the saw bomb, and then eventually turned it into a cartoon bomb. But yeah, this is very early 2000s streetwear. Also, the logos being on the back like this was how Fresh Jive was doing it in the 90s. Yeah. So a lot of streetwear nerdery going on around here.
So yeah, check these pieces out more. Greatest hits at thehundreds.com. Cool. So let's move on to the American team. I think this is pretty in tune with the social climate of today.
I like how this is kind of hooked. I have a question. So, as people are watching this, is the image reversed?
No, it's not.
Okay, so for them it's straight?
Yeah, because we were looking at it, and like, oh, she got the sign made backward, like, yeah, but then, but on their side, it's like, right. Okay. That's just like how, but yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you're tuning in, this is the first episode.
Yeah, first episode of Greatest Hits. Yeah. We're going to be digging into the hundreds, vast archive of clothing every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are just joining with us, Ben and Bobby Hundreds.
But we'll be releasing product every Tuesday?
We'll be dropping a new set of inventory every single Tuesday. So this week we have our products uploaded. Next week it's going to be a whole different batch. We're just going to keep uploading and uploading, just adding to the archive that people can then have access to online.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Good job, team.
Okay, so this
America shirt
plays, it's like a take on border crossing.
Yes. Yeah. In San Diego, they don't have them anymore. But in San Diego, I lived in San Diego for a period of my life.
They took all those signs down?
They're all gone. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they're all gone. But in the 90s, I don't know how early they started them. They had these crossing signs along the highways because of people that were crossing the border and just to look out for families. And so it was a yellow sign and it said caution in this font, and then the characters, which were nondescript, but you knew that they were entering at the Mexican border. So I reappropriated it to tell a different story that we are all immigrants in this country, and here are some, pilgrims that are also entering the country, or like Europeans entering the country, taking it from the indigenous people. And so, it was weird in San Diego, living there, seeing these signs and constantly being reminded of every day in this nation, there are people that are trying to find a better life for themselves, for their families, and they're risking everything. And what makes our nation so beautiful and so strong is that we have embraced these people with open arms for generations, immigrants, even in generations and decades where they didn't. And as it's even looking like it's going to be that way again in some capacity, it's like what our Statue of Liberty stands for is that we welcome everybody in this world, in this country. So that was it. That was the messaging behind it. We were very political more political, honestly, in our messaging and t-shirt graphics in the first 10 years of this brand. And then even and I think we're still very political today, but back then everything would be considered so controversial and polarizing now, whereas back then they were just expressions. I'm proud that we spoke up a lot about a lot of stuff at the time.
We have a question, different tone. Sandy wants to know what shoes we're wearing, what sneakers we got.
What do you got on, Justin?
I got my favorite pair of shoes I've actually ever owned. These are the Carhartt Work in Progress Converse ones. These joints are all weather, all conditions, all black. I mean, I've worn them I got them from Dover Street like a year and a half ago. Okay. And I really wear my stuff. I'm like the kind of guy, it's like I have nothing fresh. My shit gets crushed.
Yeah.
And crushed to the ground. And this is just it says punk rock to me. It says my attitude to me. It's my favorite color. It's all purpose. It's all weather. It's all day.
You can tell a lot about a person by their shoes.
Yeah, it's to me, the shoes is the portal.
Yeah.
T-shirts can vary.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm wearing this because of this thing. Oh, I picked this up off my foot. The shoes is like the ultimate portal. Because you've never seen somebody that's wearing Skechers and been like, I'm going to have a lot of You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
So like,
Wow.
it's, you know, like
Yeah.
nothing against sketches. Like you got back problems, you're like working.
Way to go, back problems.
Yeah, and you're like working in the food industry. Like yeah, like totally sketches cool.
If you work in the food industry, if you have back problems, Skechers are for you. It's the only time we're gonna let it slide.
I'm just wearing a pair of all white AF1s.
But what I bet you Ben would like to say is he has a better sneaker collection than probably you and your six best friends. No, I mean
It's just a regular pair. Maybe the second pair I've ever owned.
I remember the first pair of Air Forces I ever owned was Community of Our Sons. Was it the drops? Weird. I had no idea how comfortable they were.
Yeah.
It was like all this time I wasted like not fucking.
These are a look at the next set of Pumas, one of 4 new pairs that are dropping in the fall from the hundreds. I actually forgot the style name of this shoe, but the theme of this next collection, as you know, the one we did in the spring was all about 90s cliques and high school cliques, social tribes, but this theme is about sustainability. So just to, you know, in the spirit of this show, I wanted to kind of show them off and talk and show you where we're headed more and more as a company, as a brand, and as an industry. Good question,
Okay,
Stacey.
so you can't build a house without a foundation.
Wow, Justin, yes.
You
cannot.
So,
I mean, you can. It'd be a pretty flimsy house.
it'd be
It'd wash away.
And so this is the backbone foundation. That's right.
Yeah, one of.
So, the Paisley. So I did a little, you know, so clearly this is
Is that a
influence.
chapter in the book of this shirt?
There is. So clearly this is influence, like, you know, the bandana take, right? But I was doing research and I was like, holy shit, I had no idea the Paisley was over 2,000, 3,000 years old. Dates back to Indo-Iranian civilizations that predate the birth of Muhammad, right? These were supposed to
This I
represent.
didn't even know.
These were supposed to represent cypress trees. Cypress trees are a very bushy sort of pine tree that exists.
What?
In
So it's like
the
the
Middle
top
East, right?
view
So
of the
it's like-
bush?
yeah, so it's like you see how it could be like a tree that's like glowing.
Yeah.
And so this has been reconceptualized and reculturalized hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And now it's fucking the 2000s, Ben and Bobby hundreds are in the streets in LA, right?
Yes.
And so then they want to take, you guys want to do your take on the Paisley. And I just kind of wanted to know where the inspiration came from, when you guys dropped it. And so also, these are not the hoodies. We know the hoodies dropped first.
Yeah.
Right? And then these came out the summer. So the hoodies
Yeah.
dropped in the fall. In the spring.
Yeah.
And then you guys dropped this in the summer.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe let's just take back a step back to the hoodie. So it initially came from the hoodie that Bobby designed that was TH and Paisley.
Yes.
Yeah.
Back
That's
to
the original.
Thank you. I was
Back
going to
to-
say, most people don't know. Yes.
Yeah, so that
I
was
don't
even
even, that was called, I think, the TH hoodie. Again, TH, we can't use that anymore. But there was a black zip-up hoodie that had a big block TH in our font that we use. And on the back of the hoodie, there's a big solid bomb.
Yeah.
And both of them were filled. The TH and the bomb were filled with this Paisley print. And I don't actually like Paisley. So this is the irony. I like bandanas, right? Like, I think bandanas are cool. Like, they're just such a part of the culture. And I was trying to emulate a bandana aesthetic in the letters and in the I'm continuing to do that. Even our face masks we made for the pandemic and the actual bandanas. I was like, we got to do the OG Paisley version of the bandana. Same idea back then. And then that came out, and I think it did okay. But then there was this trend that we saw emerging in streetwear. And it was, I have to give props to like Nigo and what Bathing Ape was doing with their camouflage. They were kind of owning it. Maharishi was really owning camouflage. And so all over print really comes from the original all over print, which is camo. And then other brands were starting to look at that and saying, all right, t-shirt graphics are getting bigger and bigger. How do you cover the entire shirt? So I think the best, or the entire hoodie. And so the best version that, from what I remember at that time, was Nambigar with their Arabic writing all over print hoodie. And everyone wanted that sweatshirt. It was a zip. And it was a full zip, right?
I don't remember.
I think so. but it was like $500.
That hoodie was so sick.
So then
You
everyone
know that hoodie? Wow. No big air. Arabic print hoodie.
Yeah, it's
Legendary.
a New York brand,
Legendary brand.
Yeah, and then other brands started taking note of that and doing their own versions of all over prints. But most of the independent brands like ours at the time, like we weren't making cut and sew. It wasn't easy to just find a factory in China. Even domestically, no one would take on our minimums because we couldn't make enough. And so if you wanted to make a shirt like this, traditionally, if you want to do it the right way, you have to cut and sew it together. You literally have to like put the panels on, like print the panels, then sew it together. And none of us had the resources or the wherewithal to do it. So we had to find these machines called belt printers, which will print over the seams in a way where the paint doesn't collect along the edges and doesn't as clean as possible, even though it gets messy when you look along the sides. Yeah, you can see like it's just the paint will sometimes pool. And so a traditional screen printing machine will break when you run over seams, but a belt printer will do it in a way where it can just run across the entire print. Yeah, and there's a lot of error. So I don't remember what it was, but for like every 10 shirts, maybe like 3 of them are completely unusable, and you just have to throw them away. Talk about like not being sustainable. And so some of the other brands that we were peers with were doing a really good job of it. Rogue Status was probably the best. They had an all-over print called Gun Show, and then they started just doing these ones with like the World Trade Center really big on the shirt. Mighty Healthy had one that was an MCM rip that was really popular. Who else had like good all-over print? Hoodies or t-shirts? I mean,
Crooks.
Oh, Crooks. Yeah, Crooks and 10 Deep were killing it. They had these full zips like bait hoodies that were like actual bandana print, and then they had ones with like chains, like gold chains all over. Man, they showed up at Magic with those, and everyone was Magic. Magic was a trade. It still is, right? A fashion trade show in Vegas. And,
yeah, when Crooks pulled up with those all over print like Versace rip hoodies, it was like everybody. Oh yeah, everybody was.
Because we were just making shit like this. Yeah. And then these guys roll up, they mob. And it's just Ben and I just hanging out. And we were like, I remember we were like out near a pool or project or something, and they walked in and they were all wearing these hoodies and all over print to show like your graphic going over the entire garment. It was just like a flex. It's like, oh, I can't do that, So they just walked in the room. Oh, you fully cut and sewed. You didn't even use a belt print. You used like an actual. You like made these somewhere. They're like, yeah, because those guys all came from Echo. Like they were fully trained designers, fully trained in production. Whereas Ben and I were like former law students, we're like, I don't know how to do that stuff. And they came and they made pieces correctly. But all over print was just really big. And our first crack at it was the paisley thing, which was really supposed to feel like a bandana, and then blew up on the hoodies.
This is our first grant stuff.
Yeah.
We did
How
a
did
couple.
this change your lives in the business?
I mean, it let us buy computers. It let us buy computers. It let us
Using old beat up PCs.
Yeah.
We bought Macs.
We did our first Macs. It let us like.
Also, Macs in the 2000s was the difference.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, Mac when we got Macs, it was like only designers. If you were creative, only creative people had Mac. Like if you were in the movie business, or if you were a photographer or a designer, those were the only people that had Macs. The average Joe did not have Mac. And so like us getting a Mac was like a really big deal. Like we got Mac computers. I remember Scotty convinced us to get it. And yeah.
Justin and Scotty 2.0.
All right, so
yeah, and that's the story of this shirt. I mean, I remember it was a pain in the ass to get all of our money from PayPal because we were using PayPal as our payment processor, and they thought that we were frauding everybody, and so they held on to our money for a little bit. And
so
we
just made our first greatest hits.
Oh, sick! The white one.
Oh, their enemies finding a good new home.
Okay, so whoever bought this, you please appreciate also this tag. So you can tell what era the 100 t-shirts came from depending on the tag. And this was Forgot the years associated with this one.
This is a 2005 and 6. That's what she was.
For the years 2005 2006, we used this tag. I'm gonna walk it right up to the camera. But this tag here, it has this H with bubbles around it, which we call Kirby. Kirby bubbles after Jack Kirby, the comic book artist. But yeah, we didn't have a logo. We didn't have there was no atom bomb yet. So that was our first real logo. Congrats.
And then remember, all of these products that we've been highlighting and discussing from the Hundreds archive are available on our website, Hundreds Greatest Hits. Okay, guys, we are nearing the
Sweet. That was fun.
It was very, very great having you guys. We have one more question that I want to ask you. Somebody's asking, what's good with family style?
Woo, what is good?
I mean, I wish the pandemic wasn't going on because we'd be in like full-blown promoting Family Style Fest. But we're, as of right now, we're not sure what the city will allow us to do as far as like getting groups of people together. I think once we have a better idea of what we can and can't do as a festival, then we'll start planning out the next Family Style. But Family Style will be back, and I promise it'll be better than it was year one. So,
Year one was heard it.
Yeah, year one was nice.
It was like, so now that we're talking about the past, Family Style was like so lit. It was like nothing like that culturally has like ever been done. Where it's like, because I was like at the front entrance and we had moms and their families that are like foodie heads that are coming from Culver City. Yeah. And then we had my goon ass friends from the club that I see just fucking hammered all the time at night. And so we really, it was like the perfect meld of just like mature, fine food interest and just like the LA culture. It's like never been that. And I'm sure those moms are still talking about, oh wow, it's so diverse.
I didn't get that comment once with my mom because they're like they're used to go like preschool charity fundraisers or something. We're like, oh, it's so young, it's so hip and cool.
That Family Style felt like one of our old block parties, like this.
Oh, you need to explain this shirt. Like, you guys stand up, man, model it off, do a TikTok dance. Let's go.
This is a shirt from the payoff from. What's the date on here? Labor Day block party, September 1st, 2008. This was the last one that was like a real block party. The year after this, we got shut down and we had to throw it in the back of Brooklyn Projects. But Family Style felt like that. This is what our block parties were like. The first three were, there was thousands of people and music and food and drinking and everybody hanging out, and those were legendary days. Honestly, it felt a lot like Family Style is an upgraded version of this, but this is like it's our world, and Bobby and I just bring all of our worlds together in one place.
All right, so I think we should just go around and talk about all the teams.
Okay, so I'm wearing the Clockwork Orange in the Hundreds. This collaboration drops tomorrow night. If you're watching this Tuesday, it's Wednesday night. 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on thehundreds.com and in our app, midnight on the East Coast. This is the third of a Stanley Kubrick series that we've been unrolling for the last month. Had to put this last drop on hiatus for a bit, just with the protests last week. But it's out finally. And this is a project that is a culmination of years of negotiating with the Stanley Kubrick family. They came to us and wanted to work with us. And so, this is just one of many items. There's a lot of cut and sew pieces. It's the biggest piece, I think, of the Stanley Kubrick series. So we did The Shining, Full Metal Jacket. Now you get a Clockwork Orange. If you don't know the movie, if you haven't watched it, you should do so. It's very much, it's very timely. And there's like big noises going on outside. So, and
honestly, I need you to tell me what.
Wow. I don't even know if you should be wearing it.
I'm actually shocked.
Almost offensive.
Yeah.
Almost offensive.
How you have that? Where'd you pull that from?
I got access to the archive.
That's what I'm saying. I don't even
tell you.
Justin is wearing a Black Adam.
We've only given that shirt out once. Is that what it is?
Actually, like, given it to customers?
Yeah.
Okay, so
sometimes I say the rarest shirt. The rarest shirt we ever sold was the one that I just auctioned off for our friend Felix charity, which went for like $600 or something. That's the rarest shirt we've ever sold because there's only one of them. We've never actually sold a Black Adam shirt.
Yeah.
Black Adam is a black T-shirt with just a full color, normal, undistorted atom bomb icon on the front of it. We've never actually sold the shirt. The only way you can get it is from Ben and Di personally. And that's through friends. We meet you, we like you, build a relationship with people who actually hand you one. The only time that we did it in mass was when we opened the 100 Santa Monica, and Ben and Di personally handed them out to the first 50 people in line.
Yeah.
So those 50 people have one. And then we did a contest series last summer around my book.
Yeah.
And the people who were winning those contests for the days leading up to the book release, I personally put them into the envelope and gave it to them. So this is the only way you can get it, is you actually get it directly from us.
Well, so,
But we didn't give you that shirt,
So
Justin.
we have 50 customers, your best friends, and this fucking guy.
Yeah. The only person in the history who's gotten one not
Just
allowed.
muscled my way into the fucking club, guys. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to our first episode of Greatest Hits on the Hundreds TV. You can check us out here every single Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, all of the pieces we have gone through and others are now available for sale, one-of-one, straight from the Hundreds archive for the Hundreds customers. And yeah, make sure to follow us at the Hundreds Greatest Hits on Instagram. Thank you, Ben and Bobby, for being here.
Thanks,
Ben and Bobby
Justin.
Hundreds.
Thank you, Justin.
For sure, it's a pleasure. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.